let's go to San Diego now. That AUKUS announcement made this morning. Anthony Albanese, Joe Biden, Rishi Sunak were all there. Behind them was actually a Virginia-class submarine. It was pretty extraordinary to watch 7:30 or so this morning. Annelise joins us now. Welcome, Annelise. A lot of details out there. I think we've all got submarine fatigue, but I want to know, when we made the announcement today, the costs were close to $400 billion. It was only yesterday it was briefed into the media that they'll cost us around $200 billion. And I joked last night, I said, Dennis Shanahan, you and I both know by the time the first sub hits the water, they'll be double this cost. Well, it took 24 hours and they're double the cost. Take us through it.
Oh, look, I think these projections are just starting to get a bit of fantasy. I think they're just throwing a dart at a board at this point, but we just know it's going to be extremely expensive. What the best estimate we have is that over the forward estimates, we're going to be spending $9 billion up until the 26-27 financial year, and over the next 10 years, it will be $58 billion is the anticipated cost. But even with that, there's so many unknown factors in this. With what we've agreed to, we still don't know whether we're buying existing submarines from the US in that 3 to 5, 3 guaranteed, the extra 2 optional there. We don't know if we're buying new ones off the line, especially as what we're committing to is an extra $3 billion to increase domestic submarine capacity in the United States, because they're having their own trouble getting their nuclear submarines into the water and running, and they're below what their capacity should be at this point in time. And so we have to remember in all this, we are putting a lot into the United States and they're getting a lot back as much as we are. And I think that was something we didn't hear Anthony Albanese make that case while he was here. He didn't take a single question from a journalist at all. I was actually quite stunned, having spent a bit of time away from the press gallery. I thought he'd do at least one stop with journalists. Rishi Sunak did 2 sit-down interviews while he was here and did a gaggle with his journalists. Joe Biden took 2 questions from Kieran Gilbert, our colleague, and that was twice as many as Anthony Albanese took from any journalists while he was here.
Yeah, I find that extraordinary to go all the way to the United States, a huge announcement, and not make any, not do any media. And of course, he's flying out of LA tonight. I understand he's on his way to Fiji. There was a bilat. He had a bilateral meeting with the president of the US. This is our Prime Minister. What can you tell us about that?
It was a very friendly meeting. They spoke briefly with cameras in the room, and Joe Biden took a couple of questions there where he was quite emphatic about supporting Australia. Again, he was asked a question about could they guarantee that this submarine program will take place. We're talking about 30 years in US politics. No one really knows what the landscape's going to be here. But he did give a very strong response that this will happen, that they trust Australia, that we are taken quite seriously. And I think that is said with the best of intention and also intelligence here, because when you do look at Congress right now, there is one thing that unites the left and the right, and it's the rise of China and wanting to counter that.
Just quickly, I mean, I mentioned before, we have talked submarines non-stop for a few days here in Australia. I've seen this AUKUS announcement make the headlines in London this afternoon. Has it even rated a mention in the US media?
Oh, this banking story has people panicked, and it's been absolutely dominating everything. I was speaking to some of the White House press pool, and they were saying that they were actually excited about covering this AUKUS announcement, and it just got thrown by the wayside. And even every day, the White House press pool, there's one designated pool journalist who shares out notes of everything that happens. They're allowed the closest access to the White House. And when Biden answered those questions, the internal note was no news made, even though it was huge news for us to say that America could be relied on, all those things. And so, unfortunately, I think for all the best intentions laid, it just didn't meet the news cycle of the day.
Hey, look, I'm conscious it's 12:30 there at night. You've had a very long day, a very dawn start, I think, with the submarine announcement this morning. So we appreciate it here on Credlin. Thank you, Annelise.